Okay, so linguistic analysis is required for DEL grants. This is DEL is part of the National Science Foundation, so science is key. This is not something that documenting endangered languages program officers get to tinker with. It's a congressional mandate that the National Science Foundation will do science. So revitalization of languages is certainly on people's minds, and it is a great broader impact. National Science Foundation proposals have to have both intellectual merit and broader impacts, and language revitalization is a terrific broader impact, but it cannot be the intellectual merit, and so you have to have linguistic analysis in order to be qualified for a DEL grant. Now, what constitutes linguistic analysis varies quite a bit, and what it is that you want to put into your proposal will differ from one condition to another. Particularly if you are thinking of the broader impact of having the material be available for language revitalization, then some of the more modern techniques, such as optimality theory and phonology or minimalist syntax, are not readily comprehensible by people who have not studied those fields directly. So it may not be especially useful for a community to have those analyses available to them. Nonetheless, there has to be analysis of some sort, and so that has to be in the proposal, and it has to be explicit, and it has to constitute the intellectual merit on top of simply collecting whatever language material is collected. Simply collecting an untranslated corpus is fairly close to useless. If you don't have a translation into some majority language, it doesn't have to be English, but some majority language, then it's very unlikely that the material will ever be used, considering that these are coming from endangered languages, which may not have any native speakers in the near future. So there has to be a translation. Even a translation is a bare minimum. Transcription is really the ideal, so both a translation and a transcription. And so once you get that, then you're well on your way to having a usable data set. Linguistic analysis should come on top of that. First of all, the transcription itself is often done in a practical orthography. This makes the material much more useful for native communities. But every orthography has its own assumptions. Even shallow orthographies like Spanish or Finnish will still impose some differences in what's pronounced versus what's written down. So it's not an exact transcription. I'm a phonetician myself, and so I really revel in all the little details of the sounds, but even I do not work from completely detailed transcriptions because they are incredibly difficult to do and very, very time-consuming to do. Nonetheless, you need to be aware of the limitations that your transcription puts onto you. So if you had somebody in English saying "did you," and you transcribe it as "didyu," as we probably would, then you can understand what was being said, but it is not an accurate reflection of the phonetic string that came out of their mouths. These kind of discrepancies will always be there, but you have to be ready to deal with them in your analysis level. In terms of further levels of analysis, morphological descriptions are always useful. Many endangered languages have much more rich morphologies than majority languages do. Beyond that, semantic fields are often quite different, so collecting information about semantic fields can be very worthwhile. And other things, grammatical marking of evidentiality, who knew what, and is this just hearsay or is it common knowledge? Things like that can all be the kind of linguistic analysis that is proposed, but again, it all has to be something that is recognizable to linguists and treated by academic linguists as serious contributions to the field. So it's not enough simply to take stories and transcribe them and say we're done. There has to be a larger component than that. Further, there's a requirement now that material for NSF grants has to be archived, and the assumption is these days that the archiving will be digital. Most recordings are done digitally now, so that step is relatively easy, but it is only the first step. And what is ideal is that the further analysis will continue in these archives, and layer upon layer will be added. There are more and more automatic techniques for doing this, automatic extraction of lexical items for dictionaries, automatic alignment of transcriptions to the audio, and even the kind of hope that we've always had that we'll be able to get automatic transcriptions out of the system directly. We are closer to that than we've been in the past, and so there is some hope that that might be coming along. All of these automatic techniques can help take an archive and make it more and more useful and more accessible to a wider audience, both linguists and community members in the ideal case. So getting this kind of analysis into your proposal is both necessary and important, and it constitutes the intellectual merit of the proposal, and it has to be something that really will convince the committee that this is something that will be an advance to the science of linguistics on top of simply adding more documentation to the particular language. For community members who do not have linguistic training themselves, the easiest way to accomplish this might be to get an academic linguist into the group doing the research, either as a team member or at least a consultant. And if that is problematic, then having linguistic training among any of the members of the team is definitely worthwhile. There are, of course, more and more members of communities who are themselves linguistically trained, and this is has been a great advance for the field. So that can be taken into account too. It's also helpful to take some examples of what you want to do and the kind of thing that you want to analyze, and just do it. You don't have the funds yet, but you can just do a sample of what you're doing, and this has several benefits. First, you understand what you're going to be talking about. Secondly, it gives you examples to put into your proposal. Examples are extremely convincing to reviewers. You don't have to have prior results, but if you just have some examples that say these are the kinds of things we're going to be looking at, it's much more convincing than just saying, well, we're going to be looking at stuff. And finally, it can give you a sense of reality about how much material you can that you can process. If you say you're going to transcribe 100 hours of conversation, then you're probably not going to get funded. Over-promising is almost as deadly as under-promising. If you say you're going to do a minute of conversation, you also won't get funded. But doing some kind of analysis and generating these examples is going to give you a sense of just how long this is going to take. And don't be surprised if it's 50 to 100 times real time. It can easily take that long to do a thorough analysis of almost any linguistic text. So once you have those kind of considerations in mind, then you can make a better estimate of how much you want to promise. Basically, everybody overpromises in their grant proposals, but overdoing it is also counterproductive. People who overpromise tend not to get funded either. So the point is that you have to have the intellectual merit that's an advance to linguistic science in order to get DEL funding. It can be at any number of levels, but it has to be there, it has to be convincing. You have to convince the reviewers that you can do it, you and your team, and that once it's done, it's going to be useful both to the community itself and to the broader linguistic field.